Hi parents, I wanted to show you a project that the biology class is working on, which has worked well in this Hyflex model. So it's called the Diversity of Life Project, and we're trying to learn about what makes all organisms similar or unified, and then what differentiates different organisms from one another, and how do we classify that. So what students did in this project, there were 5 parts of the project, and they had different due dates for the different parts. Um, and each student worked by themselves for some parts and as a group for some parts. So for the first part, which was called Learn New Vocabulary, students were on Zoom and they went into breakout groups to work with another student or two. Each of the students picked one of these questions to read about and answer. And then in the breakout group, they were responsible for teaching each other the material so that everybody could type in the answers into their own document. So this was working together in Zoom breakout groups. They learned the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. They learned what a cell wall was and what its function was, the difference between unicellular and multicellular organisms, and what autotrophic and heterotrophic means. Okay, maybe for some of you that brings back high school biology, maybe some of you good memories or bad memories, I'm not sure. Then the second part, they had to work together. Again, they were in their breakout rooms to brainstorm, and they were making a shared Padlet. Now, I have to credit parents for teaching me about Padlet, because last year the parents group made a Padlet to thank the teachers for teacher appreciation. I had never used Padlet before, but in my mind, I wanted to use it as a, quote, digital bulletin board. So each group was given one kingdom to become expert in. For example, group 1 became expert in eubacteria, and group 4 became expert in fungi. I gave the group some guiding questions to help them figure out what they wanted to research, and they needed to build a Padlet that would teach all the other students in the class about their kingdom. So why would an organism be classified in this kingdom? Is it unicellular or multicellular, prokaryotic or eukaryotic? Does it have cell walls? Is it found in a certain location? Does it reproduce or eat in a certain way? So they're using the vocabulary that they learned in part 1 to create a Padlet. They needed to show me their research by having a shared Google Doc, and they inserted the link to their Google Doc here, and then they inserted the link to the Padlet here. And I'm going to show you some of those Padlets now. So there were 6 different Padlets in the end, and I posted them here. So let's look at group Archaebacteria's Padlet. So 3 students worked together to make what I would call a digital bulletin board. So here they answered all those questions I asked, included some pictures and some text to teach everyone in the class about archaea. Let's look at a different one. Let's look at the plant one. Here's another example. Group Plant made this Padlet with some pictures and some information about plants. So going back, part 4 was an individual homework assignment. They needed to come up with an individual organism within the kingdom that they were studying. So for example, that Archaebacteria group, a student would have to pick an individual Archaebacteria and learn a little bit more about it. Or my plant group, they had to pick an individual plant and learn a little bit more about it. Now here they're practicing some skills that we've already learned in previous lessons. They had to use proper binomial nomenclature or scientific naming to name their organism. They had to classify it using Linnaean classification. They had to include an image and some interesting facts. And let's go back, then they were supposed to post this onto their Padlet. So let's go back to the Archaea Padlet and see what they posted. So over here we have Kyra, and she picked Methanobrevibacter smithii. And here you can see her classification, her binomial nomenclature, her fun fact, and her image. So they made a group Padlet, and then each student was responsible for individually picking a specific specific organism and telling us a little bit more about it. Here's my plant group Padlet, and let's see if I can find their individual posts. So here's one, porcelain berry. You can see this person used proper binomial nomenclature. They classified with Linnaean classification. They included a picture and some fun facts. So it was creative. It was part group work, part individual work, part synchronous, part asynchronous. Finally, how did I assess students on this unit? Part 5 was an individual assessment. Students needed to look at each of those 6 Padlets, fill in this table. So they had to learn information from the Padlets, and then they had to answer these questions. So I think this is a good example of Hyflex model because it had kids working in Zoom in breakout groups, discussing things, whether they were present in school or remotely learning at home. It had them working in small groups. It had them working, like gaining information from whole class work, and it had them working individually. So this, I think, is a good example of the kind of work we're doing. And if you have any specific questions about 11th graders or about biology, please email me them. I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you live today. Take care.